Take a deep breath. Let your shoulders fall away from your ears. Let your jaw soften. Tonight, there is nowhere you need to be, and nothing you need to do, except listen. We are going to travel back. Not centuries. Not even 1,000 years. We are going back more than 4,000 years, to a river valley that once held one of the largest, most advanced civilizations the ancient world had ever seen. A civilization so well planned, so quietly brilliant, that some of its cities had better drainage systems than parts of the world do today. And yet, despite everything they built, despite the thousands of clues they left behind in clay and stone, there is one thing about them that no one, not a single historian, archaeologist, or linguist anywhere in the world, has ever been able to do. Read their words. Tonight, we walk through the Indus Valley. Through its cities, its rivers, its quiet streets. We will meet a people who left no kings' names, no recorded wars, no myths we can translate. Just the shape of a civilization, traced in brick and silence. Before we drift further into the past, if you're new here, you're welcome to settle in and subscribe, so more nights like this one find their way to you. And if you'd like, leave a comment below and tell me where in the world you're listening from tonight. There is something quietly wonderful about knowing this story is reaching so many different corners of the globe, all at the same late hour. Now, let your eyes rest. Let your mind go quiet. And let's begin. Long before pyramids rose in Egypt, long before the first ziggurats were stacked in Mesopotamia, a great river system was already shaping the lives of the people along its banks. This was the Indus, and its sister rivers, flowing down from the high mountains of what is now northern Pakistan and northwest India, spreading out across a wide, fertile plain. The land here was generous. Each year, the rivers would rise, spread silt across the fields, and recede, leaving behind soil so rich it barely needed convincing to grow. It's easy to imagine why people first settled here. Water. Food. Shelter from the worst of the heat. The same reasons people have always chosen to stay somewhere, repeated quietly, generation after generation, until small villages became something larger. By around 2600 BCE, this region had become home to one of the most sophisticated urban civilizations the ancient world had yet produced. Historians often call it the Indus Valley Civilization, though some prefer the name Harappan Civilization, after Harappa, one of its great cities, the first to be properly excavated. At its height, this civilization stretched across a vast area, larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Hundreds of settlements. Some small farming villages. Others, sprawling cities with populations that may have reached into the tens of thousands. And what's remarkable, what should slow your breathing down just a little as you picture it, is how organized these cities were. Picture a city built on a grid. Streets running straight, intersecting at right angles, almost like the avenues of a modern town. Picture brick houses, 2 stories high in places, built from kiln-fired bricks of a strikingly uniform size, no matter which city you visited. Picture covered drains running beneath the streets, carrying wastewater away from homes, with inspection holes built in so they could be cleaned. This was a level of urban planning that many ancient civilizations would not achieve for another 1,000 years, if ever. The 2 largest cities we know of, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, sat hundreds of kilometers apart. And yet their bricks were almost identical in size. Their weights and measures matched closely enough that archaeologists believe there may have been some shared standard across the entire civilization. Think about what that means. Somewhere, somehow, there was coordination. Agreement. A shared way of doing things, stretching across hundreds of miles, without, as far as we can tell, a single emperor's name carved into a monument to take credit for it. No grand palaces have been found here. No enormous tombs built to honor a single ruler. No statues of kings raised triumphantly above the people. If there were rulers, councils, or leaders of some kind, they left almost no trace of themselves as individuals. It's one of the gentle mysteries of this civilization. A society this organized, this consistent, and yet so quiet about who, exactly, was in charge. As you rest here in the dark, let yourself simply hold that thought. A civilization without boastful monuments. A people who built carefully, but did not seem to need to be remembered by name. We'll return to that thought later. For now, let's walk a little further into their world. The rivers were not just a source of water. They were the civilization's lifeline for trade. Indus Valley merchants traveled by river and by sea, reaching as far as Mesopotamia, where Sumerian texts mention a distant land called Meluhha, a name many scholars believe refers to the Indus Valley itself. From Meluhha, it's believed, came carnelian beads, ivory, and perhaps timber and other goods, carried along ancient trade routes that connected the Indus world to the Persian Gulf and beyond. Imagine that for a moment. A merchant in ancient Mesopotamia, unrolling a shipment of beautiful orange-red carnelian beads, knowing they had traveled an enormous distance, from a land few people in his city had ever seen. A quiet thread connecting two great civilizations, neither of which fully understood the other, and yet both shaped, in small ways, by the goods that passed between them. It is strange and rather beautiful, isn't it? That trade, something so practical, so ordinary, is sometimes the closest thing we have to evidence that two ancient worlds once reached toward each other across an unimaginable distance. Let yourself sink a little deeper now. The river is still flowing, somewhere in the dark behind your eyes. Let it carry you forward, gently, into the next part of our story. If you could walk the streets of Mohenjo-daro today, as they once were, you would notice almost immediately how deliberate everything feels. The streets run in straight lines, north to south, east to west, forming a grid pattern. Main thoroughfares are wide enough for carts. Smaller lanes branch off toward private homes. There is a sense, even now, looking at the excavated ruins, that someone thought carefully about how people would move through this space. Homes were typically built around a central courtyard, open to the sky, where families likely cooked, worked, and spent much of their daily lives, away from the heat and dust of the street. Walls were thick, made of fired brick, which would have helped keep interiors cool even during the hottest months. Many homes had their own wells. Many had bathing platforms, carefully sloped so that water could drain away through clay pipes built directly into the walls, out into the street drains below. This wasn't a luxury reserved for the wealthy few. Across the city, ordinary homes show this same attention to comfort and hygiene. It's worth sitting with that for a moment. 4,000 years ago, while many other ancient societies were managing waste with far less care, the people of the Indus Valley were quietly building plumbing into their homes. Covered drains ran beneath nearly every street, carrying water and waste safely out of the city. Inspection chambers were built at intervals so that blockages could be cleared. There is no flashy way to describe a sewage system. And yet, somehow, this one feels almost moving in its quiet practicality. It tells us something gentle about these people. They cared, deeply it seems, about comfort, cleanliness, and the simple daily dignity of living well. At the heart of Mohenjo-daro stood what archaeologists now call the Great Bath. A large, rectangular tank, built with finely fitted bricks and a watertight layer of bitumen, sunk into the ground and surrounded by a brick colonnade. Steps led down into the water on either end. We don't know exactly what the Great Bath was used for. It may have served a religious or ceremonial purpose, a place for ritual purification, something we see in later traditions across South Asia. Or it may have simply been a grand, practical bathing facility, used by many. Historians remain genuinely divided, and where the evidence is uncertain, it's worth being honest about that uncertainty rather than inventing an answer that feels satisfying. What we can say is that building such a structure, one requiring real engineering skill to keep watertight, tells us this was a society capable of large, coordinated building projects. Whether for worship or for daily life, someone planned this carefully, and many hands carried it out. Nearby, archaeologists have found what may have been a kind of granary, a large structure possibly used for storing surplus grain. If true, this would suggest some form of centralized food storage, perhaps even redistribution, a quiet hint at organized governance, even without the loud monuments other civilizations left behind. Across the wider civilization, smaller towns and villages followed many of the same patterns. Standardized bricks, careful drainage, a sense of shared design language, as if everyone, no matter how far apart, had agreed on how a well-built home should feel. Let your breathing slow further here. Picture, if you'd like, the quiet of an evening in one of these homes. The courtyard cooling after a long, warm day. The soft sound of water from a nearby well. A family settling in for the night, much as you are settling in now, in your own quiet space, thousands of years later. Some things, it seems, do not change so very much. Here is something gently strange about the Indus Valley civilization. We know, with real confidence, how they built their cities. We know quite a lot about their daily comforts. And yet, we know almost nothing about who specifically led them. No grand inscriptions boast of a king's victories. No royal tombs, filled with treasure, have been found, the kind that might tell us who was considered important enough to be remembered forever. No statues raised high above public squares with a ruler's face carved into stone. There are small clay and stone figurines, of course. Some appear to show priest-like figures, dressed in elaborate robes, with carefully styled hair or headdresses. One famous example, often called the Priest King, found at Mohenjo-daro, shows a calm, composed face, eyes half closed, a band wrapped around the head, a robe draped over one shoulder. We don't know his name. We don't know if he was a priest, a king, or simply an ordinary man considered worth depicting for reasons now lost to us. It's tempting, looking at a face carved with such care, to want to know more. Who was he? What did people call him? Did children run past his home on their way to play, the way children do everywhere, in every era? We will likely never know. What we do have are seals. Small, carved stones, often no larger than a postage stamp, usually showing an animal, a bull, an elephant, a tiger, sometimes a creature that looks almost like a unicorn, accompanied by a short sequence of symbols. These seals were likely used much like signatures or stamps, perhaps to mark ownership of goods, or to seal a container during trade. Thousands of these seals have been found, scattered across the entire civilization and beyond, as far as Mesopotamia. And it's here, in these small carved symbols, that we run into the great unresolved mystery of the Indus Valley. We cannot read what they say. Across more than 4,000 discovered inscriptions, scholars have identified somewhere between 400 and 600 distinct symbols. Some appear constantly. Others appear only once or twice in the entire surviving record. The most common symbol resembles a kind of jar shape, appearing again and again across many different objects. The script appears to have been written from right to left, a detail archaeologists were able to work out by noticing how, near the edges of some seals, the symbols become compressed, almost as if the writer was running out of space and crowding the final characters together. It's a small, human detail, isn't it? Someone, 4,000 years ago, running short on room, just like anyone might today. But knowing the direction of the writing is not the same as knowing what it says. And here is the heart of the difficulty. Most inscriptions are extraordinarily short. The average is around 5 symbols. The longest known sequence is only about 26 symbols long. To put that in perspective, the famous Rosetta Stone, which allowed scholars to finally decode Egyptian hieroglyphs, contained the same lengthy text written in 3 different scripts side by side, giving researchers something to compare and cross-check. The Indus script has no Rosetta Stone. No bilingual inscription has ever been found, nothing pairing these symbols with a language we already understand. And because the texts are so short, there simply isn't enough raw material to firmly establish grammar, word patterns, or sentence structure, the way researchers have managed with other ancient scripts. Scholars don't even fully agree on what kind of system this is. Some believe it represents a genuine written language, perhaps connected to early Dravidian languages still spoken in parts of South India today. Others have suggested a connection to early forms of Brahmi script. A few researchers have even questioned whether it was a complete language at all, suggesting it might have functioned more like a system of trade symbols or administrative markings, without representing spoken words in the way true writing does. In 2025, the question became significant enough that an Indian state government offered a $1 million prize to anyone who could successfully decipher the script, a reflection of just how unresolved, and how deeply important, this mystery remains. Modern researchers have begun applying computer analysis and artificial intelligence to the problem, studying the statistical patterns in how symbols repeat and combine. This work has revealed interesting structural patterns. Certain symbols seem to behave in consistent positions, suggesting genuine organization rather than randomness. But structure alone does not equal translation. Knowing that a sequence of symbols follows rules is not the same as knowing what those symbols mean. So here we are, you and I, 4,000 years later, surrounded by the seals, the bricks, the bath, the drains, knowing so much about how these people lived, and so little about how they described their own lives, in their own words, in their own voices. There is something almost peaceful in that silence, if you let yourself sit with it instead of straining against it. We don't need every answer tonight. We can simply hold the mystery gently, the way you might hold a smooth stone you found on a riverbank, turning it over once or twice, without needing to know exactly how it was formed. Let yourself rest in that unknowing for a moment. Some stories are allowed to stay unfinished. Let's walk a little further into their daily lives. Not the mysteries, for now, just the gentle, ordinary details of how people once spent their days. Indus Valley farmers grew wheat and barley as staple crops, along with peas, sesame, and dates. In the region around Gujarat, evidence suggests they also cultivated millet, suited to the slightly drier conditions there. Some of the earliest evidence for cultivated cotton in the world comes from this civilization, cotton that was likely spun and woven into cloth, clothing generations of people in fabric softer than wool, better suited to the heat. It's a small thing, perhaps, but try to picture it. Someone, 4,000 years ago, choosing a cotton garment because it felt cooler against their skin on a hot afternoon. The comfort we still seek today in our clothing, already understood, already being sold for, this long ago. Animals were domesticated and cared for. Cattle appear frequently in art, and seals, likely valued for milk, labor in the fields, and perhaps religious significance, much as cattle would remain important in South Asian culture for thousands of years afterward. Water buffalo, sheep, goats, and possibly even early forms of domesticated elephants, lived alongside these communities. Children's toys have been discovered as well, small clay carts with wheels that could actually turn, miniature animals, whistles shaped like birds. There is something quietly moving about finding a child's toy, perfectly preserved, after 40 centuries. A reminder that childhood, play, and small moments of joy are some of the most enduring threads connecting us to people whose names we will never know. Indus Valley craftsmen were remarkably skilled. Bead making, particularly with carnelian, a reddish-orange stone, reached an extraordinary level of refinement. Some beads required dozens of careful steps to produce: heating, chipping, drilling with specialized stone-tipped drills, and a final stage of heat treatment to deepen and even out the color. A single long carnelian bead might have taken days of focused, careful work to complete. Metalworking was well developed too. Copper and bronze tools, ornaments, and small figurines have been found, including a tiny bronze sculpture, often called the Dancing Girl, discovered at Mohenjo-daro. She stands with one hand on her hip, one arm covered in bangles, in a relaxed, confident pose that feels, even now, remarkably alive. We don't know her name. We don't know if she represents a real person, a deity, or simply an artist's idea of grace. But something about her posture has reached across 4,000 years and made people pause, again and again, every time they see her. Pottery from this civilization is often painted with geometric patterns, and sometimes with images of animals, plants, or simple scenes that may have held meaning we can no longer fully access. Black painted designs on a red background appear frequently, a visual style distinct enough that archaeologists can often identify Indus Valley pottery at a glance, wherever in the ancient world it turns up. And turn up it did, far beyond the Indus region itself. Evidence of trade connections has been found stretching from Central Asia to the Arabian Peninsula, to Mesopotamia itself. Indus Valley merchants seem to have been steady, reliable participants in a much wider ancient network of exchange, contributing their own beautiful, distinctive goods to a world that, even then, was more connected than we sometimes imagine. As you rest here, picture a marketplace in one of these ancient cities. The murmur of bargaining voices. The smell of grain, of woven cotton, of warm bread. A child running past, clutching a small clay cart with wheels that really turn. Somewhere nearby, a craftsman bent carefully over a half-finished carnelian bead, in no particular hurry, the work itself a kind of quiet meditation. These were not strange, distant people, separated from us by some unbridgeable gap. They worried about comfort. They valued skill. They loved their children, made them toys, and probably told them, in words we cannot read, very ordinary, very human things. Be careful. Come inside, it's getting dark. I love you. We simply cannot read the words. But we can recognize, gently, in the shapes they left behind, that the feelings were very much the same as ours. Every great civilization, eventually, changes. And the story of how the Indus Valley civilization wound down, slowly, over a long stretch of time, is itself wrapped in genuine scholarly uncertainty. For many decades, the dominant theory suggested a dramatic invasion, with newly arriving groups overwhelming the Indus cities. This idea, sometimes called the Aryan invasion theory, was popular through much of the 20th century. However, more recent archaeological and genetic research has painted a more gradual, more complicated picture. Most modern scholars no longer believe there was a sudden, violent conquest. Instead, the evidence points toward a slow process of decline and transformation, likely caused by a combination of factors unfolding over generations, even centuries. Climate change appears to have played a significant role. Around 2000 BCE, evidence suggests the monsoon patterns across the region began to shift, weakening over time. Some rivers that the civilization depended on, particularly a river system some scholars associate with the ancient Sarasvati mentioned in later texts, appear to have dried up or changed course significantly. Imagine depending, as every generation before you had depended, on a river that had always been there. And then, slowly, almost too slowly to notice from year to year, watching it change. Less water each season. Crops that once grew easily, growing more reluctantly. It would not have felt like a single catastrophic event. It would have felt, more likely, like a long, quiet pressure, building gradually, across a lifetime, across several lifetimes. As the rivers shifted, many of the great cities seem to have been gradually abandoned, not all at once, but unevenly, over a span of time. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa show signs of decline, populations appearing to shrink, the careful urban planning that once defined them slowly breaking down. Some smaller settlements, particularly those further east, closer to more reliable water sources, appear to have grown during this same period, suggesting that people were migrating, adapting, moving toward where life remained more sustainable, rather than the civilization simply vanishing. This later period is sometimes called the late Harappan phase. Trade networks seem to have weakened. The famous standardized weights and the seals themselves become less common in the archaeological record. The grand public architecture, the great baths, the careful grid streets, give way gradually to smaller, more modest settlements. It's worth pausing here, gently, to say something important. This was not the disappearance of a people. It was the transformation of a way of life. The descendants of Indus Valley communities did not vanish from history. Many scholars believe their genetic and cultural legacy continued on, woven gradually into the later cultures of the Indian subcontinent, influencing agricultural practices, craft traditions, and possibly even elements of religious and cultural life that would continue for thousands of years afterward. so perhaps it is less accurate to think of this as an ending, and more accurate to think of it as one chapter quietly closing, as the people themselves continued on, adapting, moving, carrying forward whatever could be carried, the way people everywhere have always done when circumstances slowly shift beneath their feet. The cities themselves, though, fell silent. Streets that once carried the sound of footsteps, marketplace bargaining, children's laughter, slowly filled with dust and sediment. Roofs collapsed. Walls crumbled. The careful brick drains, no longer maintained, slowly clogged and were buried. And there they remained, hidden beneath the earth, for more than 3,000 years. Let yourself rest in that long, quiet stretch of time. 3,000 years of silence, broken only by wind, and the slow, patient work of soil settling gently over everything that had once been so carefully built. It was not until the 1820s that a British East India Company official named Charles Masson, travelling through the region, first noted the ruins at Harappa, though at the time, no one fully understood what they were looking at. For decades afterward, the ruins were treated with a kind of careless disregard. In one particularly difficult detail to sit with, bricks from the ancient city of Harappa were actually removed and used as ballast for railway construction in the 1850s, a quiet, almost unbearable irony. An ancient civilization's careful brickwork, repurposed to help build a railway line, its true age and significance not yet recognized. It would take until the 1920s for serious archaeological excavation to begin. Indian archaeologists Daya Ram Soni and Rakaldas Banerjee led major excavations at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro respectively, working under the broader direction of John Marshall, who was then head of the Archaeological Survey of India. What they found, slowly, carefully, brushing away centuries of dust, astonished the archaeological world. This was not a minor, regional settlement. This was an entire civilization, vast, sophisticated, and almost entirely unknown to history, hiding for thousands of years beneath ordinary fields and low, unremarkable mounds of earth. The discovery reshaped how historians understood the ancient world. Until then, the great early civilizations were generally considered to be Egypt and Mesopotamia. The Indus Valley civilization, once properly understood, took its place beside them, a third great cradle of early urban civilization, every bit as old, every bit as sophisticated, yet completely unknown to the wider world until less than a century before our time. Since those first excavations, archaeologists have identified more than 1,000 Indus Valley sites, spread across what is now Pakistan and northwestern India, with smaller sites discovered as far as Afghanistan. Many of these sites remain only partially excavated. Some, quite likely, remain entirely undiscovered, still resting beneath fields and villages, waiting. Modern archaeology continues, carefully, patiently. Researchers use satellite imagery now, looking for the faint outlines of buried structures, the subtle color changes in soil that might indicate an ancient wall or street, invisible from the ground, but sometimes visible from far above. Genetic studies, drawing on skeletal remains and comparing ancient and modern DNA, have begun adding new layers to our understanding, suggesting connections between Indus Valley populations and present-day communities across South Asia, supporting the gentler, gradual transformation theory over the older, more dramatic invasion narrative. And the question of the script remains genuinely, actively alive. Researchers continue applying new statistical methods, new computational tools, carefully studying the patterns within the 4,000 or so surviving inscriptions. Some recent academic work has focused specifically on positional patterns within the seals, the way certain symbols seem to behave consistently depending on where they appear in a sequence, hinting at real linguistic structure, even without a translation. It is entirely possible, and worth holding onto gently as a quiet hope, that future discoveries, perhaps a longer inscription, perhaps a fortunate bilingual find, might one day allow this script to finally speak. Or it's possible that it never will, that this particular silence may simply be permanent, one of history's questions that closes without ever fully opening. Either way, the search continues. Patiently. Without urgency. The way good, careful work often does. As you rest here, consider this gently. Somewhere right now, in a quiet office or laboratory, a researcher may be looking at a photograph of one of these ancient seals, turning the same 5 symbols over in their mind, the way you might turn over a thought just before sleep, patient, curious, in no particular hurry to reach an answer tonight. So what do we carry forward from all of this? What does the Indus Valley civilization leave us, beyond bricks and beads and an unread script? Perhaps, first, a quiet lesson in humility. This was one of the largest, most organized civilizations of the ancient world, and yet it left behind almost no record of individual glory. No king's name shouted across the centuries. No conqueror's boast carved triumphantly into stone. Just careful streets. Functional drains. Honest, comfortable homes. It is, in its own quiet way, a strikingly modern set of values. Comfort. Cleanliness. Fair, standardized measures in trade. Shared civic infrastructure that served ordinary people, not just the powerful few. We sometimes assume that ancient societies must have been ruled by loud, boastful figures, demanding to be remembered. The Indus Valley quietly reminds us that this was never the only way to build a great civilization. There's also something gently humbling in the mystery of the script itself. We live in an age that often assumes every question has, or eventually will have, an answer, that with enough computing power, enough clever algorithms, enough patient research, all mysteries eventually yield. The Indus script resists that assumption, at least for now. It sits there, quietly, for 100 or so symbols, repeating across thousands of objects, full of obvious structure and pattern, and yet stubbornly silent about its actual meaning. Perhaps that's a small, useful thing to carry into your own life as well. Not every question needs an immediate answer. Some mysteries are allowed to simply exist, patiently, without urgency, without anxiety, waiting for their moment, or perhaps never needing one at all. The Indus Valley people, whoever specifically led them, however they organized their society, clearly valued something we might call quiet dignity. Comfortable homes for ordinary families. Careful sanitation, long before most of the world considered it a priority. Trade conducted, it seems, through fair and consistent standards. Art that captured grace and movement, a small bronze dancer, forever mid-step, calm and confident, asking for nothing except to be noticed, gently, by whoever happened to look her way, eventually, across the centuries. Even now, knowing so little about their inner lives, their beliefs, their stories, we can still recognize something deeply familiar in what they built. The desire for a clean, comfortable home. The wish to create something beautiful, even in something as small as a single bead. The simple, universal love of making toys for children so they might laugh, and play, and feel safe. These are not foreign concerns from a forgotten world. These are the same quiet concerns that likely occupied your own day, in some form, today, and will again tomorrow. In that sense, perhaps the Indus Valley civilization is not nearly as silent as it first appears. We may never read their written words. But in the careful slope of a drainage pipe, in the steady size of a brick, in the gentle confidence of a small bronze dancer's pose, they have, in their own way, already told us a great deal about who they were. They valued order, but not at the expense of beauty. They valued trade, but seemingly without an obsession with personal glory. They built for comfort, for generations they would never personally meet, the way any thoughtful person plants a tree today, fully aware they may never sit in its shade themselves. Let that thought settle gently as you continue to rest. Somewhere, 4,000 years ago, someone laid a brick, knowing it might outlast them by thousands of years, never imagining that you, here, now, in this quiet moment, would one day think of them so carefully, so gently, as you drift toward sleep. Thank you for spending this quiet time with me tonight, walking gently through the streets of a civilization that built so carefully, and said so little about itself in return. We've walked along the great rivers that gave them life. We've wandered the careful grid streets of Mohenjo-daro, paused beside the still water of the Great Bath, and stood quietly among seals whose meaning may always remain just out of reach. We've watched their slow, gradual transformation, and the long centuries of silence that followed, before patient archaeologists, working brushstroke by careful brushstroke, woke this ancient world from its long sleep. If you found something peaceful in this story tonight, please consider subscribing, so future nights, future quiet journeys through history, can find their way to you as well. And if you have a history that you'd love for me to explore in this same calm way, somewhere in the ancient or more recent past, please leave it in the comments below. I read through them carefully, and many of our future nights together begin from your suggestions. For now, let the Indus Valley fade gently into the dark behind your eyes. Let the rivers keep flowing, quietly, the way they always have. Let the cities rest, beneath their soft covering of earth, patient, unbothered by time. Wherever you are tonight, I hope this found you exactly when you needed it. Sleep well. And I'll see you again, very soon, for another quiet journey through history.